Great, guys. Welcome to the last session of the day. It's going to be awesome. We have a great panel today. It's about trends in UA monetization. And I'm Johan Lofström. I represent Chartboost. We're a big ad network in mobile gaming. And I have a great panel with me. Like I just said, we have Igor Lauter from Outfit 7, veteran in the company. For those who doesn't know Outfit 7, they are, well, really short about them is that they are the creators of the Talking Tom series and have generated more than 7 billion downloads. We also have Robert Kelly from Papaya Mobile, who's heading the relaunch in Europe for Papaya. And Alexander Ekvall, who is a veteran in the industry, currently co-founder and CEO of Snowprint Games, worked a long time for King when his own company was acquired. And yeah, I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves, but that's basically the lineup for today. And I want to focus on 3 things that I personally think are really interesting right now. And first one is programmatic. It's happening there, both on the UA side and on the monetization side. And secondly, on ad formats and game mechanics, how that is developing right now. And lastly, on there's one more part. Sorry, guys. The last part about general trends in monetization and UA. So CPI and ARPU, how that is developing, basically. So yeah, why don't we start off, guys, with another round of a little bit more detailed introduction, maybe?
Hi there, my name is Rob Kelly. I'm from Papaya Mobile. Please forgive me, I've got a bit of a cold, so I don't usually sound this sexy and husky, but I am doing it especially for you guys. 10 years in mobile, very much on the performance and marketing and monetization side. Work for a number of ad networks. Very proud to be back at Papaya. We are very much UA specialists, and looking forward to the panel.
So Igor Lauter, VP Digital Sales for Outfit 7. My main responsibilities are making sure that our games get to our users, so distribution-wise, and also that we monetize our games. So taking care of all the ad mediation platform and partnerships as well.
So Alexander Ekvall from Snowprint Studios. I'm on my 13th year now in handheld and mobile gaming. Focusing right now on trying to break into the very competitive mid-core segment of gaming with what we believe is a new approach. So yeah, that's it.
Cool, awesome. So I want to kick off with programmatic and on the monetization side. I think we all heard header bidding as kind of one of the biggest buzzwords floating around right now. One company that is kind of spearheading that part right now on the monetization side is Outfit 7. So I wanted to ask you, Igor, if you wouldn't mind describing a little bit what you guys are doing right now, and any challenges and opportunities and kind of differences with header bidding versus traditional networks in monetization side.
Yeah, so we are always on the lookout for what's happening in the industry and so on. So header bidding is, let's say, the buzzword of last year, or we'll see maybe this year. So we're trying to solve the same problem which exchanges were supposed to solve. So we'll see if we do it right this time. I don't know, maybe. We are kind of keeping a very active role in this. I cannot say more than this, but working with many partners, and there are many ad networks and partners who are working on this. So I think we will see some consolidation in the industry. There will be less importance of ad mediation maybe in a few years. We'll see as the thing. But I don't think it will solve the problem 100%. It still will, it will make the whole thing a little bit more efficient. My estimate is maybe 5 to 10% more for the publishers at the end. So we'll see.
Okay, but that's the kind of level of increase that you're looking at. You're not looking at anything. It's not anything bigger than that. It's more.
Well, it will, it will level the playing field for demand, because publishers sometimes can be at a disadvantage now because they have to, choose between different networks, which one gets traffic and so on, and not allowing them to fight between each other, right? So header bidding should solve or help to solve this problem, at least to a certain extent, and it will also make like the revenue shares that exchanges take, it will maybe reduce it by a certain amount, we'll see, which should make it then more efficient in this regard.
Okay. Great. On the ad format side, we have another thing that changed a lot, right? I mean, there's been a lot of new ad units coming out the last couple of years. There's been a lot more awareness, I think, with developers also on how to monetize and when to think about monetization. And I wanted to ask you, Alexander, if you, I mean, as a game developer in 13 years in the industry, how have you seen those things change in the last years? And are you working differently with it now than you did, say, 5 years ago?
I think from our point of view, we've always said that it starts with the engagement and the retention of the players, and that we go for monetization after that. So once you have a loyal fan base and you're sure that you have a good game, that's when we move to look at monetization. I think we saw a bit of a change in that when publishers moved more into the space and started working and were new to the free-to-play format, because it's telling someone that you're going to wait with the monetization part and be cool about it is not necessarily the easiest case to make. We are very lucky now to be working with King, so my previous employer, with our game that we have in soft launch. And that allowed us for the first probably 8 months to completely disregard monetization when we were in playtest. Of course, that you need to have some sort of deep pockets to be able to do those kind of tests and such. But talking to both platforms and smaller developers, we see that there's a bigger and bigger understanding for this and a bigger patience for not kind of throwing in monetization and try to squeeze pennies early on. Also, lower conversion offers rather than trying to convert at a high point as possible to get spenders and then focus on engagement to drive a repeat spend. So I think we're starting to get a bit more relaxed and more patient and looking at longer term returns on the investments.
And that goes for IP as well as ad monetization? Or is there any difference there, you see?
For us, the way we look at it on ads is that it's adding something on the top, kind of trying to monetize the rest of the people who are not converting into the paying users, right? So we design for it from the start. We look at it the same way. You have to do it well from the ground up. But we don't see it as something that we kind of rely solely on. So I would say no, we don't see it for ads because to us it's not the main monetization driver, but we treat it the same way when we design for it.
Okay, understood. Have you seen a difference in IP versus ad monetization recently? The last few years as well?
I think generally there's been more of a mega trend that, and I don't know whether this is something which will be reflected in the audience, and that a lot of the developers I've been speaking to have been monetizing more through ads than through IAP. As I found it increasingly difficult to engage people on IAP longer term. The problem is that it's also becoming increasingly difficult to monetize through ads, as yields from traditional units like banners, MPUs, etc. have been falling, and you've been seeing very much a crowding towards monetization through rewarded video and playable formats. One thing which, and I'm not going to mention which, sometimes you've actually seen the amount, therefore, of rewarded video units being used have actually been quite off-putting within the user experience. And personally, I've actually, on some games, been reduced to putting my phone onto airplane mode, so the ads won't load, so I can actually still continue playing. But it's, I think, systematic of a wider trend that you're seeing that rewarded video is a format which does fit very well into gaming. The other formats don't fit so well. So it's one which goes hand in hand with the user experience. But it can therefore be overused to a certain extent.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think we're looking at two different definitely two different ways of approaching monetization, right? We have some games that are more around super quick, super addictive core loops, and you burn out your users for after a month or something. And then we have kind of the mid-core type of games where we need to look at monthly or yearly retention numbers and be very careful with kind of how we treat the gamers. And if we do the ads, they need to be like a part of the loop, and definitely not a part of the offline mode, because our game won't work in offline mode either, right? So.
Yeah, I think all three of us are here on the same page. So I would also agree that the ratio between e-ups and ad revenue is actually more dependent on the game mechanic and what kind of game it is than just what you want, because what you want is not always what you get, right? And I would also agree that rewarded video is the format which is more suited for games because it's on demand. User can select it anytime I want to see this video. As with display ads, it's kind of forced, right? So it takes more toll on the user experience. That's why users churn faster and so on. And rewarded video, if done right, can actually help with the retention as well.
That's actually exactly what I hear as well. Only good stories when it comes to monetization and retention and engagement from rewarded video properly implemented.
Are you under the impression that rewarded video is monetizing better now than it did, let's say, 2 years ago? CPMs going up?
Well, I would say maybe there's more competition there, So it monetizes better because it's more mature, I would say. So also, demand brands are picking it up and so on. So it's maybe more demand out there than it was a few years ago. But it's kind of stable, I would say, but at least for us, we see it's a stable format. You can kind of count on it. We see some kind of improvements done by networks in terms of how creative they are with the formats, which might get interesting in the future, we'll see. But for now, it's quite stable compared to other formats.
Brand is really interesting, and I know that, for instance, King had a reputation of only want to do ad monetization through brands, not through other games, for instance. Robert, this for you. What have you seen there in terms of brand monetization in gaming? Is that something that's grown a lot lately, and do you expect it to grow a lot also in the future? Is it going to make a big impact on it?
I think it's something which the industry wants to grow. We're talking a lot, and rewarded video particularly is getting a lot of praise here on this panel, and it's one of the few units in mobile which demonstrably works, and that we've created a very successful advertising ecosystem within gaming. Now, I know that certain companies like IronSource and a number of others are now concentrating on selling into brands with this provable, marketable unit. I think it's not about whether it could work, it's about actually still getting over that the belief within the brands, and this is something that they want to engage with. At the moment, from what I've seen, there's still not that much in the way of brand dollars going into it, but it'll only take a couple for that to break, and then other people will start using it. And I think it's very exciting because this then, to developers, game developers, this opens up a huge new revenue stream. You've got a great revenue stream already coming from within the gaming industry. To get brands involved is going to be very good news indeed.
Do you think it's the proliferation now of programmatic and DSP buying? Is that helping the whole brands breaking into the?
Again, because it's something which they're familiar with, because they've been buying programmatically and through DSPs for a while. And being able to do this into another market also means that they'll be interested. But I think it's also, when you talk about this, how are they actually going to use these formats? What sort of messaging are they going to get into rewarded video? What are they going to use perhaps playable ads for? Is it going to be then, as well as branding, but also for lead generation and other things on top?
What are you guys' experience in ad formats for brands then? Is it video? Is it playables? Static? Only?
So rewarded, I think it's still maybe, the one where they use it the most at the moment. But for brands to really make use of the what game can offer and so on, I think we'll see more native formats. You know, integrating the brand more into the game in a certain way, which maybe fits that brand the best, and it doesn't work for another one. So it will get more and more complex if you want to advertise, you know, natively in your brand in the game.
I mean, I can definitely see that happening in huge publishers like you guys have. But what about smaller developers? Are they going to be able to do that as well? Because you can't do Coca-Cola integration in a small game, basically, right? Doesn't really scale.
That's true, but still, maybe we'll also see some interesting uses for the existing formats. So for sure, with the older video, what we are seeing more and more demand, they just want to have like completed views, right? It's not about the click anymore, it's about seeing the video, which then builds the brand awareness. And it's a good format because of the rewarded nature, right? So user wants to see it until the end to get the reward. So it works for a lot of brands, not for everybody, of course. But still.
I'd disagree to a certain extent. Yes, I think that for huge publishers like Outfit 7, Rovio, Supercell, whoever, actually, yes, doing a native integration makes sense to a certain degree, but I think that actually what will attract brands to rewarded video is that the infrastructure for quick delivery across a wide variety of apps and audiences is ready-made. They've actually got, brands have actually got some bad experiences with doing large-scale native integrations, not just within mobile, but going all the way back to desktop and the initial things. And they can see it as an it's almost reinventing the wheel because you're having to build the experience right from the start. And it might be good for a particular product launch or something where there is a huge budget behind it. But for everyday brand building, I think they'd be looking for something which is much more easily scalable, be easier to replicate.
Which platforms do you think are going to benefit the most from that, in that case, that kind of development?
In the platforms in terms of actual providers or...
Yeah, I'm thinking more of on either the DSP or the programmatic providers or the networks, or will the brands actually go directly to them? Again, I think it'll be interesting to see whether DSPs who are already buying brand will actually integrate with the existing mediation platforms like Fiverr or IronSource enabled to do this. Problem is quite often in this industry actually is its own worst enemy, with everybody trying to rebuild the relationships. And at the moment, I could quite easily see the branding DSPs trying to reinvent the wheel and getting to the various different publishers. I've got significant experience in looking to sell SDKs into publishers, and I know how difficult that can be. And I think it would be much easier for them to work through the existing channels. Okay. Another issue that that come up, is quite interesting today, is that we talked about different ad formats here, right? And we talked about video, playables have been mentioned, and static. We're talking about rewarded versus interstitial and so on. Things are changing quite a lot now, and some of the, especially the interactive ad units are quite big now and a bit more complex. And one problem now is that is the whole ad formats, growth, is it actually getting too complex right now? Is this actually a problem especially for publishers? That's a question I would love to hand to you, Igor.
Yeah.
In terms of ad format complexity, is that a huge deal now?
It is increasing, yes, because industry, obviously there is not much going on in the placements, so they have to be innovative, like interstitial format and so on. So we have seen video, which is much more annoying than static display, right, ad for the user. And is it skippable, non-skippable, and so on. So we have seen a lot of things going on with the big bad influence on the user experience. Not just with the skippable, but also the formats are so complex, especially the playables, that there is a whole game running now in the ad, right? And it takes resources from the original game, which then on some devices, or depends on what kind of game we have, causes different problems like crashes and so on, because just of the complexity of resource exhaustion and so on. And you cannot test this because at the test time you don't go around through all the ads that exist. It just runs, and it can make a big issue in the production later on. Depends how big you are and so on, how visible this is. But the problem have the big enough problem, you will get feedback from the users, which is not good.
Is that mainly the problem that the access board hardware, or is it a size issue of the actual playables?
It's both. It's both. So one thing is just playing that ad on the device, and then also bandwidth issue, and loading all these ads and everything. And of course, the user doesn't know that it's going to do that, but still, it's your problem if the app is using a lot of bandwidth, right?
Something you experience as well, Robert?
Yeah, again, it's from when we've been speaking to publishers. Again, when they've been running, when we've been looking to monetize it, areas that have always created issues has been with regards to the weight of the SDK. Therefore, this means that publishers are very reticent about swapping out SDKs for new units when there's no guarantee it's actually going to raise or significantly raise the monetization potential. If you're going to lose a number of users or potential users as a result, this can actually offset any monetary gain you might make through a higher yield for the ad unit. Again, it's something which a lot of publishers are actually quite happy with the mix that they've got in. It's something which is only going to generate an incremental gain in revenue, as opposed to a quantum leap in revenue. It's something which they will often treat with caution.
Yeah, I mean, coming from an ad network myself, I know that the reluctance a lot of publishers have to adding SDKs. I mean, they don't want to make your game bigger and more complex and all that.
Also, it's going to drain, if it's successful for another game, it could drain their users away.
Yeah, true, absolutely. Alexander, is this something you guys think about as well? Developing the games in terms of number of SDKs in there, or for ad monetization, or analytics, others things?
Definitely, size is always one of our main concerns. Not only for the SDKs, but we definitely, the technical choices we make from day one is to make room for what we will need down the road. That's one of the things that we need to design for from the start, right? So our game right now has 30 plus characters in there, and 160 something levels with guilds and boss fights and such, and we're still under 100 megs as we push it out, and it's full 3D. And the 3D there is one of the tech choices we made to be able to have overhead left for other types of SDKs that we will need to have to make it a successful business.
Okay, good. I have kind of a simple question I wanted to ever kind of go around, and it depends. It's on the it's based on the trends. So looking at user acquisition, for instance, I mean, are we looking at an environment coming now where the CPIs are going to go up a lot more and making it even harder to acquire users, or are we looking at a kind of a now with more automatic programmatic buying that is actually going to be relatively stable because you're going to be able to pick the users a bit better? What are you guys' opinion about the CPI trends at the moment?
Again, I think just looking at the CPI cost is actually ignoring quite a lot of the actual trends which are going on in advertisers' minds. What I've seen is actually the CPI itself has become secondary to the clarity and transparency of the install. One of the reasons why we concentrate on social media advertising now is because the feedback that we've got from clients is that it's not so much the CPI itself, but the trust that they can have that the CPI has come from, the install has come from a recognized source. And also then the post-install KPIs LTV of the user. Again, they have to measure that against the ARPU that they're going to make on it. But it's one of the things that we will lose campaigns now if we are not able to provide that sort of level of transparency and clarity on the post-install events. And I think one of the things that advertisers to a certain degree are coming to realize is that they cannot dictate the CPI like they used to. You used to get a brief and they'd say, okay, this is our CPI, what have you based it on? The budget. Where did you get the budget from? The budgeting department. It's not actually based on how much it really costs to acquire that user. And what that has done by actually looking to acquire users more cheaply than users are really available for is a whole shadow market in installs. And we've seen that these installs are usually not actually worth the reduced amount that they've paid for them. Many advertisers are coming to realize that. As a result, there has been continuing upward pressure on CPIs. Now, one area where CPIs has been going up quite significantly is within Facebook. Facebook for many game developers is the preferred route to market. But because it is one of only a couple of preferred routes to market, so much budget has been piling in there that it's now ridiculously expensive sometimes on Facebook to acquire the sort of users that you're looking for. The alternative. I think what the market is missing to a degree, therefore, are other as trustworthy routes to market.
I kind of agree with that, but just making it very simple. You know, if there is more demand, if we talked before with the brand demand, right? If there is more demand for the same inventory, the prices will go up. So we see CPI slowly creeping up, but it's just one part of the story, as Rob mentioned. You know, we have to look at all the LTVs and the strategy, how you make the ROI positive and everything. You know, it's not only about the price that you are paying for. So, but yeah, it will probably creep up as mobile itself becomes more mature and it just becomes part of the advertising ecosystem.
Yeah, we are still definitely very positive for the outlook about the kind of the LTV and CPI relationship. We definitely monitor all the CPIs and the channels, and we work efficiently with shutting down different channels based on each campaign. So it's not necessarily so that the same channel will always perform as well for each point in time or each country. So we monitor it for each campaign, for the creatives that we're using, for the country that we're in currently. And we are also seeing a lot more experimenting with different channels, except for purely CPI kind of driven. More social, like you mentioned, is definitely a huge trend to also work with the influencers. And then we're going to have the install attribution problem, and that's kind of the thing that we need to start cracking to be able to be as sophisticated as we are now with the different channels where we are getting users in.
Do you see any partners now offering actually to buy on ROAS, or return on advertising spend, or ROI? That like give us a budget of 10,000 and we give you 10% 7-day ROI, for instance. Are you seeing a lot of those kind of offers right now in them?
I'm not that deep into that part of.
Okay. Anyone else?
I don't remember seeing something like that. No.
No. Would you like to see it?
Yeah, but how will they calculate this? They need data from you. So it's very hard for advertisers to promise something like that.
Well, they need a postback of the purchase postback, right?
Yeah, sure, but
and then they can measure the ROI themselves.
But it's not only about the apps; it's also advertising, right? So how do you calculate the LTV of app which monetizes mostly through ads and so on? It's a more complex problem.
I think there will be a lot of reluctance in sharing data back from the players, how they are behaving in the game.
Yeah, and one more thing for the brands. I now remember when you say the brands want more data for their targeting, right? Especially
Definitely.
like location-based or something. And this is a problem for certain apps like ours, which it's not really doesn't make sense to have that permission for geolocation, right? And it will never pass a review, for example, if you have that. So it will not work always. And having more data and putting them into advertiser hands, it will be more and more pressure in the future, I think, as well.
Yeah, definitely.
makes sense. Okay, in terms of another simple question, relatively, I guess, on monetization trends. Are you seeing that are developers in general now making more money per user than they were 2 years ago? And 2 years from now, is that still going to go up, if it's going up right now?
Well, my guess, since I can't speak in exact terms, is that you'll probably see that the larger ones are going to keep making more money from the users they have, and that's going to kind of, I think it's going to be more and more consolidation towards the larger ones being able to grab more money, especially as the other trend that we're seeing a lot for developers right now is they are learning from the kind of the Asian and Japanese live ops culture. And with that comes the baggage of being able to break down what works, what doesn't work, looking at the KPIs for each of these campaigns and live ops, and there are a lot of them. We, relatively small studio, are running over 150-ish live ops just per month at this time, and we are kind of just getting started. If you go to the Japanese culture or the games, then they're running 1,000. And so just imagine the segmentation and all the things that you'll need to. So the ones that are capable of doing that are going to earn more and more from the players they have in there. And that's why it's so much more, getting more and more important that you have something where you'll keep the players in there. Engagement, retention, because once you have them, you'll get more and more sophisticated through live ops, through live events, and getting more money out of them.
From my experience, it depends very much on the developer. The formats which are able to display. Older developers with legacy apps and non-interactive formats are not going to be making as much as ones who actually installed the more interactive formats. One of the mega trends that I have noticed is actually emerging markets, you're seeing higher levels of monetization per user. And they're starting to catch up more, and there's still a significant gulf between those and the more developed markets. I think that over time, yes, there is more money going into mobile, but it's not simply that developers will make more. They have to be attuned to be able to catch that money and have the right ad formats, right user experience, right adding gameplay for them to be able to do it.
Yeah, I agree. We have seen the same with rewarded video. Like 4 years ago, it was nowhere, right? And now everybody is using it for the games. And we had, like, My Talking Gnome was already out 4 years ago. So we had to adapt, you know, and it's about adapting your product to whatever industry is offering at the moment and keeping up with the trends. And if you want to have that longer lifetime out of your games and, you know, whatever you have, you just have to, you know, change and embrace the change and not fight against it. And yes, also in emerging markets, we'll see more and more rewarded video because currently it's maybe expensive because of the bandwidth costs. So display is still kind of the king there, but this will change. Like there was just last year in India, there was a new mobile operator, and the prices of 3G like dropped by a factor of 50 or something like that, and you see, you know, distribution skyrocket because of that. So, you know, technology changes and improvements.
Okay, cool. Time is running a little bit out. I wanted to end on the outlook for kind of the indie developers, or maybe more to touch on what you said, Alexander, about, you know, how it's so important that you have, you know, retention, but I think also that you have a strong monetization so that you can make money from the users and invest in further user acquisition. And if companies, some companies, the big ones, are becoming so much better in monetization, then they may also push out the smaller guys, right, with being able to offer much higher CPIs. But I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think? Is the trend right now going towards the bigger guys taking a bigger part of the pie and making it harder and harder for indies, or is it actually creating opportunities for small guys that play the kind of niche game. What do you guys, as a final question, what do you think? What's the outlook for indies?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I think definitely we'll continue to see the consolidation that's already happening, and it's going to be harder and harder. I think both larger platforms that we are talking to and following closely in terms of Google and Apple are doing great things to have different highlights and such, which is of course super important, and I hope that that kind of also continues to get better, because I think we'll have a healthier ecosystem. But it's always super hard. We see it kind of with other platforms like Steam and such, where they once were a good place, but they get flooded. And then now it's like going to be the next thing with the Nintendo Switch, and pretty soon we're going to see kind of a flooding there as well, and that's going to kind of lead to that same type of consolidation. But I definitely think that if there are niches that you can still find, but I'm not sure that necessarily it's going to be. Depends on kind of also how you define the indie space, because we have a lot of big companies now, and we're going to continue to see people starting new businesses who have been there and have a lot of experience from these monetization techniques and leverage that in their own businesses.
Good point.
So I think it's today, of course, it's harder to get into the market than it was like 5 years ago. But still, it's a matter of money, right? And there is lots of VC money around. So as market stabilizes, there will always be someone who can do something to disrupt it a little bit. And we are seeing this, going in circles, I guess. So yeah, it will consolidate, but then again, there will be something more new, which we haven't seen before.
I think it's perhaps a difference between indie developers and publishers. I think people don't tend to remember that I believe King didn't even actually develop Candy Crush themselves, bought it off of some third party.
No.
This is a story that somebody told me down the pub, which wasn't. But
An urban myth.
Again, you do see that there are a lot of independent companies developing games who will go through and achieve scale through larger publishing groups, and I think you'll see actually people trying to get into the market by actually almost like aspiring rock stars used to go to the music publishing companies and selling their wares. And I think that's something which will be growing in importance. I think the market's dynamic, it works in the handsets are constantly changing, the dynamics are constantly changing. To think that it's actually going to become static is not going to be the case.
That's for sure, I think. Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, guys. I don't know, do we have time for questions as well from the audience? Or?
Probably a couple too,
Yeah, please.
I'm interested in your thoughts on banners, but mostly that your feelings whether or not they're entirely dead, or if there's a possible resurgence in the sense that phones are becoming taller. I'm a publisher. We have several titles and examples of games where we have snuck banners in that have had no impact on retention, and basically, like, revenue-wise brought in maybe half of what you would see from an interstitial or a video placement. I've been trying to convince advertisers to bring back banners, and have successfully had 2 networks in the last year bring back a placement. So
Banners are not dead. We actually were discussing this internally maybe 2 years ago or something like that, but then it kind of stabilized, and I think we will see being more creative in terms of creatives. Like interstitial was also just a static display, right, at the time, and now what banner is. But I think it will change in the future as well. Banners are not dead yet, at least.
I agree. I mean, we're bringing it back too.
really?
Yeah,
I've been trying to convince my rep from Sharpist for a while.
it's happening.
Yeah.
We'll talk after. Eddie, yeah.
No, I don't think that banners are dead. There are still significant amounts of money going through them. But repeat what Igor said, I think you'll see that there will be developments in the banner to actually make them more engaging and more visible. The problem at the moment is not that anything about it's that people automatically manage to block them in their vision. You don't see them. You know, when was the last time you actually remember seeing a banner? You know, you've probably had hundreds displayed to you over the last couple of days. So it's something which is actually going to make them more visible and make them more engaging, more interactive, and probably actually slightly bigger as a way forward. But I think that if we put all the eggs in one basket with regards to rewarded video, that's equally as dangerous.
Any other questions? No? Okay, well, thank you again, guys, so much. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.